Welcome to the November meeting of the NBEAA. It's a win to just get here and start the meeting 10 minutes late. Thanks everybody for showing up online and in person. We'd like to start with host appreciation for Thunderstruck Motors, and particularly Arden, who got here and got the heat going for us. And Arden's over here. And we meet here at Thunderstruck, and I think there might be a slide coming up that says, don't put your fingers on anything. And that's particularly true because there's a bunch of open batteries today. So let's assume we've covered that. So we can move right into introductions. Who are you? And what's your other favorite hobby? And I will start. My name is Sonja, and right now my other favorite hobby is getting ready for a ½ inch of rain on Monday by digging out my driveway a little bit, helping to guide the water. I really enjoy playing in mud puddles. Yeah. And so let's just start in person here.
Morning, everybody. Mike Newell.
Hey, Mike.
Actually, I'm going to continue on Sonja's theme, and that I'm charging at the moment my brand new battery leaf vacuum so that I can get the last of the leaves before Monday's rain.
Oh, cool.
Rain will be that leaf vacuum.
It's a vacuum and not a blower. Yeah, that was really my question.
I already have that, but no, it's out of the bag, so it mulches anything.
Hi, I'm Tor. What's a favorite hobby? Well, I like things to do with bicycles and engaging the local high school students in various community activities.
Steve Pierce, and gardening, landscaping, and continuing on with the other theme, getting my rain barrels ready for the coming rain.
All right. And then
Yeah.
we've got
So
Bill. Would you like to go next?
Oh, yeah, and Bill, favorite hobby is making art from used things.
Wow.
And if you want to see Bill's anti-Trump book, he brought it with him. True factor, Brad.
Tell tube.
Brad?
I'm a member of 2 other groups inside the Bay Electric Hub Association. The Santa Rosa Taco Tuesday bike ride is something I do most Tuesdays. It's the largest regular bike ride Santa Rosa's ever had. And then the North Bay Linux user group, which is a collection of source software enthusiasts, involved in that as well.
Sweet.
I'm John from Ukiah, and let's see, I have a electric vehicle scooter that's broke down. Sorry about that. And other than that, at my advanced stage, I'm feeling a lot like a automotive electric vehicle wannabe, because my wife only lets me use her Mach-E once every couple months.
It's a nice car though.
My name's Arden. I like to play a little music, and also I do a little DJing from the snack.
Sweet. David.
Okay, I'm David, and I got into a project that my neighbors had 3 player pianos, and they sold their house and were moving away, and told me that, well, one of them's going to Milwaukee, the big one. This one's going to the dump. And I said, player piano to the dump, I'll take it. But I had to get it out of their house, next door, you know. But they had steps. I built a ramp. My house, the only one on the circle that has no stairs from the street, driveway, garage, house. I just got to get over the sills last time. But I got about
300 pounds.
weighs like a 1,500.
Okay.
Very convenient.
Well, you're aiming at me, so I guess I'm next. I'm Jerry.
You in the truck.
Me in the truck. I'm Jerry. I rebuilt two electric scooters, the 300-pound model electric scooters. We're talking about smaller scooters.
Well, I call it scooter, it's a 160 horsepower.
Oh, yours is an electric.
Yeah, it's got a 21 kilowatt battery on it. On board, it's twice as big as what we're installing with our solar system.
The scooter's bigger than the house battery. That's a good one.
In fact, Zano, I don't know if he's on here, has one for sale that we just finished rebuilding and doesn't want to ride it, and I don't want to ride it because I gave my last one away. They're way too powerful. And I have rebuilt the piano out there. And my hobbies, I don't know. I play music when I got the piano and trumpet, trombone and stuff like that. I don't play it enough. I build stuff. I fix stuff. Maybe that's my hobby. I fix stuff. And then when I get a chance, I get in the airplane and I fly. And anybody can help me find the oil leak in the airplane. Great.
Dominic, do you want to start and nominate around?
Yeah, sure. I'm Dom, and let's see. My hobby this summer has been working on the house. Finally, just got the house and the shop painted, and so weather tight, and the deck as well. But it has been 4 months of replacing all the rotten wood that the termites love eating. So this year was a tent the house year, and I'm not a fan of tenting the house, if you're wondering. But everything's, I got to play with all my woodworking tools, and everything is almost put away. So how about David Heacock?
Yeah, I guess along with my Ivana, my hobby basically is auto repair or body repair. I kind of like doing welding and metal work and fixing body. It's a fiberglass body, so it gives you a lot of opportunities to play around with things and change shapes. For about the last 8 months, though, I guess I should call my other hobby is stock investing.
Oh,
I switched over some of my things to Charles Payne. I don't know if everybody knows who he is, but he's been around for a lot of years, and it's kind of fun. I mean, there's a certain amount of time it takes, but the results have been pretty amazing from my standpoint. I don't have a lot of money in it, but it's
one of several concerns raised with this proposal. The board listened to about 6 hours of public comment on it. So
I'm going to tell the next person because we're looking at speaker view.
So anyway,
Thanks, David.
Yep.
Cecilia, do you want to go?
Hi, Cecilia Sullivan, President Emeritus of NBEAA. I think I'm going to go with art as well as my other hobby and or gardening. Although I don't feel like I have enough time for either of those these days. I'm based in Ukiah, and I'll pass to Gary.
To who?
Is that Gary?
Gary on Martin.
with this.
Russ, why don't you go? We see your face.
Hi, I'm Russ Wigglesworth. I don't have a specific hobby, but I guess working on the house is one. I too have just painted my house, and I'm getting ready for putting a roof on the first week of December. So that's the big project here. And then the yard gets tackled after it rehydrates a bit.
You're supposed to put the roof on before December.
I know, but that's what it ended up being December.
I remember Lawrence is online. We don't have our multi-view, so we're guessing.
You can put the multi-view on, but it was blocking the screen. That's what
Yeah. Lawrence, are you available?
I'll take that as an invitation to go ahead. So I'm Lawrence out of Palo Alto. If you can't read the fine print, I frequently drive a Bolt EV from 2019. An EV related thing, which doesn't qualify as another hobby, is taking apart and fixing EVSEs, EV chargers. The unrelated hobby is rainwater collection so that I can flush a toilet year round without using good drinking water for that purpose. And so we had a little bit of a rain the other day, and so I've been running around tuning my system and replacing broken, rusted out stainless steel bits that were holding together float switches and whatnot that I built myself out of corks and mercury switch capsules and little bits of stainless steel, which I guess isn't so stainless after all.
Yeah. Who did we miss?
That's what I'm just gonna find out.
And
A message came up in the chat from Gary. Shall I read it?
Sure.
Gary says, "Hi, I'm Gary. I enjoy hiking and figuring out why my mic doesn't work."
Gosh. Perfect. Okay.
All right.
We're down space bar.
There we go. You're driving.
Sure. So you're at a meeting of the NBEAA today, and you can learn more at nbeaa.org. And there's a quick way to get to the Zoom meetings on the second Saturday of the month. There also, each of our monthly videos is recorded and linked from nbeaa.org. If you join our Google group NBEAA-Club, you will get a notice to come to this meeting, and it'll come a week in advance and a day in advance. And you also get our recap email. We also are working on a Facebook group if you have any interest in doing more there. A couple of us have, kind of gotten it started. I'd love to see you there. The last thing is that every spring we have an officers election, and we do not have a vice president this year. And so there is room if you would like to become an officer. Let one of the officers know. Okay, next slide.
And just so you point out, the system we set up 5-6 years ago was whoever's vice president gets to be president the next year.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of work to do unless you take on work that you want to do.
That's right.
No, you don't have to do that.
I'm going to give myself a little more abuse so
Good.
People aren't
Keep going.
disembodied. All right. So in addition to information at NBEAA, we keep a YouTube channel going. Everything just links out to YouTube, and we create a PDF of our slides because all the links are active. And so if you say you're really interested in that PG&E conversation that we had with a couple people who were setting up a vehicle to grid, you can get that PDF and then use the active links from it, which could be handy. Excellent. As I mentioned, in addition to NBEAA-Club, we have a discussion board, and you can join the discussion board. It's great for in-between month kind of conversations or ad hoc conversations, or if you want to sell a used EV or something like that. And then if you want to promote anything to become news during a monthly meeting, you can just use our regular email, news@nbeaa.org. That's not a Google group anymore. That's just an email address. You can just forward a link and what you would want to cover in that topic. EVA leadership call. So
yeah, so I put this one together. Sonia, were you on this call?
I wasn't.
Okay, so I saw Russ on the call, so thanks for attending. There was a few topics that were relevant to the membership, and there was a number of topics that we need to talk about at the leadership level. One of that we should all be aware of is apparently the EVA and some chapters have been targeted by predatory law firms for copyrighted photos. So these guys are going through our website or the EVA's website and looking for photos that we may not own, or may not have declared whose rights they are. So let's see. This is poorly written. When we use a let's see. Well, be sure when we use an image that we own it. And we need to scrub our website and presentations for images that we don't own, and we need to reference who owns them when we call them out. So something like I said, we need to look at on our own website. I've not taken a look since the call because I want to talk about this with the leadership. At the national level, there were 188 NDEW events, and Cecilia is going to talk about what we did for National Drive a Week, Electric Week locally. I assume that it was you, Cecilia, who put that chart together. But there were 188 total events around the country, so really great turnout and really great participation with all the clubs. And a lot of the clubs, a lot of the Drive Electric Weeks are in collaboration with some of the other groups, the Sierra Club or the Plug-in America and so forth. And I think we had Plug-in America at our own National Drive Electric Week this past early October. Next year, they're going to expand it for a full month. So it'll be National Drive Electric Month, 12 September to 12 October. And I'm guessing we're going to try to mix up the format a little bit so we can get more attendance. I think we all felt like we were in a bit of a back lot at Sonoma Clean Power. Regrettably,
I thought that would be the case.
Yeah, but we had incredible dealership and owner participation. I mean, I think we had 3 or 4 dealers there, if I'm not mistaken. So we did really well from that perspective. And then assuming that these grants actually get funded and that the DoD is not really overly affected by this election, reportedly there's a grant available from the DOE for ride and drive that starts next year, which cover costs and liability insurance of actually doing drives. So when we do ride and drives now, and I don't think we do them much, but when other organizations do ride and drives, the liability for that is not really covered by the EVA. And I think that the funding opportunities in 2025 will cover the liability for the drives themselves. So that'll be a great change, something that we need to look forward to. And additional funds available for those events as well. So they were talking about thousands of dollars being available. Again, assuming that all stays stuck together. And then let's see. So we were invited by Don, somebody who lives. He has 3 houses or 2 houses. One's in Sebastopol. 3 houses. One's in Sebastopol. One's in San Fran, and one is up in Manchester or on the coast somewhere. And he invited us to participate to an I Am Democracy event. And so I grabbed the flag and a bunch of folders and drove up there for the day. My wife and I ended up staying at, there's a fantastic hotel there in Point Arena under new ownership, and I forgot the name of it, but it's overlooking the harbor there. But spent 20 minutes talking with the newly elected California Senator Chris Rogers on his Tesla Model 3 experiences. And he is the fired up human being when it comes to EV, all things EV. He was on spot on all of it that I had familiarity with, and fully engaged in all the climate change initiatives that we need to. I think I'll reach out to him and see if he'll come and talk to us next year sometime when he gets elected, and see if he'll spend 20 minutes with us, because he was really a good point of contact, and I'm sure he's got good relationships with the outgoing State Senator Mike McGuire from Healdsburg. So we'll see what happens to Mike McGuire. But in any case, we had about 5 cars there, and there were great speeches about the importance of democracy, and some really great, awesome local foods, either food trucks or local restaurants bringing things in. So it was a really good event, and very glad that we did that. I think Sonia, you were saying that with this and National Drive Electric Week and the 2 events that we did for Earth Day, we doubled the number of events that we as an organization participated in from 2023 to 2024. So That's really good news.
Yeah, it was really good outreach this year.
Yeah, yeah. Over to you, Cecilia.
All right, I can start. Sonny, if you want to jump into, that's fine. So this is an event we did this October 5th at Sonoma Clean Power's employee parking lot. We had about 60 attendees, and there were several presentations that happened at Advanced Energy Center. I wasn't there for that. Sonny, would you like to share anything about that?
Yeah, it was temperatures were over 100 degrees that day, and we started the day meeting in the Advanced Energy Center, and I'd say there were about 20 different people who were interested in mostly new EVs, but some used EVs who were had dedicated the day to learn more, which was really great. And we were charged with the idea of speaking 10 to 15 minutes on 4 or 5 topics. And so Dominic took 3 of the topics, I think, and an employee of Sonoma Clean Power walked through rebates, and I walked through used EVs, and Ellen was involved in some conversation around road trips. And people stayed and were really engaged, and then moved on to the parking lot and checked out the cars from there. So even though it was pretty hot, I think it really served a purpose. So thanks everybody for doing that. And it was really fun to try to focus on like a 10-minute presentation versus something longer.
I wasn't there because I was in Europe at the time, or Alaska or someplace. And I'm just looking at 60 attendees. And I remember last year when we did this on
4th Street.
And it was like, there must have been several hundred people.
There were 200,
It was very, it was very deflated by the heat and by the back parking lot. And so, people were really dedicated who were there, and maybe we can solve for both problems next year.
We should think about it.
To Sonia's point about people staying long, it was pretty interesting. We got to 11 o'clock and said, hey, we're out of time. If anybody wants to go see the cars, go ahead and go. I think about a third of maybe 20% of the folks got up and left. And everybody else stayed. And honestly, then we just kind of slowed down. And I think we broke up out of there by 11:30. So we ran over 30 minutes, and people stayed with us and were engaged and had good questions. So it was, we have to somehow keep the presentation component as tied into this, but I think we need to get off the back parking lot. So I think we'll appeal to Sonoma Clean Power to get the cones back out, or maybe block the street or something, do something that allows us to get more traffic there.
Yeah, you want to get to the city.
Yeah, I think so, Jerry.
All right, so this came in September. This was SB 59 was signed by Governor Gavin Newsom, and the NBEAA back in April 2023 had endorsed the previous SB 233, excuse me, and that bill is to require that that EVs sold in California have bi-directional charging capability. Not all EVs, but it'd be some classes. But basically the bill, it authorizes the State Energy Resources Convention and the Development Commission in consultation with some other departments to be able to require any weight class of like battery electric vehicle to be bi-directional capable. So this is a good thing for California going forward as we deal with our energy things.
So it's not passed yet, it's still in process?
It's passed and signed.
And when does it take effect?
I believe it starts next year. I'm not the expert on this.
No, I think it rolls in 2028 or 2030 or something. They wanted it early and they kept pushing it to the right, and so they rolled it out to give time for the manufacturers to redesign the electronics to do this.
Could I make a statement based on this? My understanding is that all cars that have DC fast charging capability already have all the hardware, and people are spoofing them thinking that they're hooked up to a fast charger in order to get power out. Apparently, most of the software doesn't notice power going out rather than going in, and doesn't shut it down. There's a couple of devices that you can buy for Tesla, I think out of China, that give you 120 volts out from the DC, from the NACS port. The concern there is that once Tesla hears about it, they might put a software update on their cars, which make it impossible to do that. But I know people were pulling 5 kilowatts out of Tesla Model 3s and Ys via the NACS port without changing any of the software in the car, just spoofing the car into thinking it's talking to a fast charger. So the capability is already there, but for whatever reason, it's being kept hidden from us.
Yeah, and Lawrence, it's not in all circuits, in all, because I used to work for a company and we made electric buses and trucks, and I've talked to the CEO, who's now the CTO of the company, and I said, why don't you do vehicle to grid? He said, he said, it's not that complicated for us to do. They do have to change the circuit. So it depends on how you actually have.
Well, if you're doing DC out from the vehicle, so long as you, I mean, all DC fast charging is basically you have a direct connection from the port to the battery via contactors. And so long as those contactors are closed, you can put power in or you can take power out.
Yeah, but
now,
there's a portion of that where you have to actually get the voltages at the right levels, and you have to have that level of control. And if you don't have that level of control, you can't go in the other direction. So it's not just software.
Well, I guess I'd want to go into more detail on that because
I guess I'd recommend we do that all.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
I don't fully understand.
All right.
Did we skip an item?
But anyways, I just wanted to say that like Tesla says you can't do bi-directional charging until they come out with their new charging board, and that is not true. I just wanted everybody to understand that is not true. Maybe they're trying to preserve their Powerwall business, or maybe they're talking about AC out, whatever it is. Right now, you can get DC out of an unmodified Tesla 3 or Y, and people aren't talking about it. People aren't doing it, except for a few hobbyists here and there, and then these products coming out of China, which Tesla might brick tomorrow if they want to.
All right.
Okay. All right.
This one. Yeah.
So after this election, there was an article in Wired about the potential electric vehicle impact. In the past, Trump has claimed that he will end the electric vehicle mandate on day one. I think this is guidelines to try to have a percentage of EVs being new car sales in the future. And also, although he's claimed that he's not associated with it, Project 2025, they've criticized EV subsidies, tax credits, and improved fuel economy standards. Elon Musk, associated with Tesla, did support Trump, and so Trump has said that he loves EVs. But with the steep tariffs that can impact automakers who are importing EVs, it's a little unclear, like exactly where we're going to end up. It's possible, quite possible that there'll be a negative impact, but we'll see how things play out.
All right.
All right.
Oh, this is Tor. Tor, you want to sit here and do?
With my back to the muggins.
Or you can sit in my chair.
Oh, well, I'll just sit here, I guess. Let's pick up the audio. So, yeah, I shared with some relatives the other day, like I was going to share about renting an EV in Norway today, and they just laughed, like, what a nerdy thing. But, and they said, are you going to have slides? I go, of course I'm going to have slides. But sort of the preamble with this is that I've been driving a Bolt for a while and navigating the multitude of non-Tesla chargers here in the US that you have to have different apps for and all this kind of thing. So was going to Norway to visit some family in October and decided to rent a car for the first time ever. Always use train, public transit, beg for rides. And I was nervous about, I'd heard that they had pretty similar or even worse sort of multitude of different brand chargers that you had to have an app for every one to activate. And I was doing all this research beforehand. So this is just a little, hopefully short recap on this, and I'll grab your questions after I get through this.
Shoot it down hour.
Okay, here we go. So, when I booked an EV online, it was cheaper, but look how many different brands there are.
Jeez.
Do I got to have an app for every one of them? And this is just, this is not all of the brands of charging stations.
I hope that was one screenshot and not
Did you-
20.
Did you stay in Norway? So you didn't tell us about like where you.
Oh, I was just outside of Oslo. And also, I'll touch upon this. I mean, the house I was staying at was built in the 50s. We blew fuses there, not even plugging in a charger. So we didn't consider that as an option. So I started doing research, and I was like, was there a universal chip or an app that would, activate all of these? Not readily apparent. But I did, because I speak a little Norwegian, I found that the Electric Auto Association there, you could, if you were a member, meaning you were a local, you could get this charging club, Ladeklubben, which could be swiped at all the chargers, but you got to be a member. So that wasn't going to work for me. So then I go, well, a couple of my cousins are driving EVs. I said, what would you recommend? And one of them said, well, just get the Tesla app and this app called Mare. And so and then I kept digging around. I found a kind of the equivalent of what's it called? Plug charge? Plug share. I almost forgot. With all the chargers in the country, and I thought that was pretty useful. And so this Mare app, a Mare charger, was in the neighborhood where I was going to be. So I'm like, okay, I think this will work. Because the other question is like, do any of these chargers just take a credit card? Well, yes, but no. So this one, yeah, I've written it here already, but it's sort of to take with a credit card, you have to get it in the app, but you have to have a Norwegian phone number. So mention you're local. So then I paused for a moment and got like, what the hell? So then a day later, I just plugged in some phone number and address of a relative, and it got me past that. So I felt at that point, I can at least charge at this Mare fast station, which was a mile or so from where I was going to stay. I hoped. And what about home charging? So, the car came with a lot of cables, but as I mentioned, the house I was staying at was kind of risky to plug in there. And if I needed it, there's a cousin or two in the area that I could have, they have home chargers, so I could have done that. But I didn't use that. And then when we got to Oslo and picked up the car, they're like, oh, there's a universal app. I'm like, you could have told me. I could have not spent weeks, stressing about it. They didn't. My cousins didn't know about it. So I said, well, and then the tagline was like, well, almost all the chargers, not Mare, which is the one that, was near where I was staying. But I downloaded this app and I did use it once. So mostly was this Mare app, and I've done fast charges, so it worked pretty much like the ones here, and it worked as, of course. When I came back, well, this one's down for repairs. So they have the same problems as the ones here. Repair timeline is slow too there sometimes. So this one day I was going to drive into Oslo. Don't do it with a car. It was a nightmare. But I thought, okay, we're going to go into town, park the car, go do some sightseeing. I can plug into a level 2 charger. And see how that goes. Unfortunately, I got a little delayed, and so I wasn't going to have enough. I actually tried to find one, but it was such a mess getting around with a car in there and then the ones I found were broken or something like that. So I redirected and found a fast charger over by the port, and I used the Elton app to activate it. But this is what I found as neighbors. So I had discovered a fast charger that was first party with big trucks. Luckily, they weren't there when I first pulled up. and I found out, I got charging. But meanwhile, I was sitting there, it's like this 100% electric concrete truck shows up. It's a 300 kW charger, and then this little delivery vehicle shows up. So they're transforming these types of vehicles in their society there. There's kind of a little side note.
What are the brands of those trucks?
I don't know. And then this is just off topic of charging, but I saw VW buses everywhere, and I think almost 100% of what I saw were being used as company cars or little work vehicles, things like that. So, part of the reason too is when you buy a car in Norway, if it's designated as a work or a cargo type vehicle, the taxes are cheaper. So I don't fully understand that because EVs are also lower taxed. But anyway, the buzz is being used quite a lot there.
Yeah.
VW.
Yeah.
That's
VW, I've heard of.
Yeah, it's coming here. We keep waiting, but
The ID buzz.
the ID buzz. I didn't put the ID there. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So here's my conclusion. It's like, yes, they're readily available. In fact, they were cheaper to rent than gas cars. But please let me know beforehand, because and then there's work to be done to actually getting all of the chargers on this one universal app. So these were the signs that were sitting there in where we picked up the car.
So, Tor,
Yeah.
a couple of questions,
Yeah.
comments. One was the connector for the fast charge. Did it look like the SAE standard?
Yeah.
Okay. One thing I'm surprised on the concrete truck, having worked on, and not very successfully, garbage trucks to make them electric.
Yeah.
The accessories are impossible there's like 100 years worth of design of the accessories on that kind of a vehicle, like making the drums spin or
still work.
compacting stuff, making that stuff work, and make the brakes work.
Yeah, that's a whole other
combustion engine.
deep dive.
They must have figured it out though.
Yeah, it's all hydraulic, but then you got to run it all, but it all ran off the engine, so it wasn't like.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of controls to ramp it up. Yeah. The last one was I ran the same experience in Florida, not on this trip, but on the previous trip. I went down to go rent a car. Ended up not renting a car, but went to go rent a car, and I found out that renting an electric car in Florida was less expensive than renting a gas car.
Right.
Sweet.
Well, Hertz also here. I remember renting a car from Hertz here, and I said, "Oh, they go unless you want an electric." And I go, "Well, where would you recommend charging it?" Because they didn't share any.
Yeah.
Oh, go to Electrify. I think, boss, was it Electrify America? It's like that's just one of many. So
Yeah. Do you use PlugShare when you're here?
it's very a lot.
Did you
Yeah.
try using it in Norway?
No, they have some other equivalent.
Okay, and the reason I asked that was that I do a lot of transit stuff these days because of the things I volunteered for. And I have this application called Transit that I'm using in the Bay Area. And if you stand someplace, it tells you when the buses are going to show and how many minutes till each bus or train or whatever else is going to show up.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of Rome and I open up the app and I bring Transit, says 98 will be here in 2 minutes.
Not everything's international.
You have a question, Tom? No.
Well, I was gonna add that Thoreau is your other route, and my wife went to Delaware, and I found in Baltimore, BWI Airport neighborhood, a Nissan Aria, the new model, for $42 a day.
Wow.
This is private owned cars being rented. Yeah. Yeah. And we rented it was the first slide. It was a Toyota, and they gave it a funny name, BZ. I call it the Berserk, but I don't remember. It was like an unmemorable name, but
BZ4 or something.
BZRT 1234. I don't know.
Hey, Tor, how good was Mur once you got into using that app? Was it pretty good, or did you have issues?
It worked fine. It didn't have the credit card swipe thing, but yeah, it had that little trick that you gotta just throw in somebody's Norwegian phone number to give you access to the app. But once you got in, it worked.
Once you did that, you just tapped it at the. Okay, well that's good. And then when I was in Germany, I think a couple of weeks before you were in Norway, and I was kind of curious, what was the local acceptance of EVs in Norway? Is it favorable or universally just that's what we're doing, or was there political grumbling that countercurrent?
I mean, I was mingling with a large network of family and friends, and scattered amongst them of EV adopters and EV drivers, and we honestly didn't have a conversation about those damn EVs or anything like that. So I think it's pretty adoptive. It's there's a lot of traffic there still, so that's more of the issue, I think, probably. And electricity there has come down. It fluctuates. So price of electricity, one cousin just bought a Ioniq 5 and said, "Oh yeah, my fuel cost is like half." Yeah. So I think they're pretty much loving it.
Still happy. And then my question was going to be about the saturation. Like, did you drive into parking lots that were just like tons and tons of chargers? Because they've got so many EVs now, right?
I mean, I used the Mara one exclusively, which was like 3 or 4 at this market in the small community where I was, and I never had a problem. But that doesn't mean that there was elsewhere.
You're making it sound like it looks like California, but in California we have like what, 20% EVs at this point, and in Norway we have like 80 or so.
No, it's just it's 25% new EV.
New
sales.
New.
Yeah.
So 10 or 15.
I couldn't really comment on queues or waiting lines with like holiday times. There are lineups over there, like summer holidays, we're all going to the mountain cabins, whatever, and like they're lined up to charge.
Got it.
Same with our issues. So
Norway, originally they had a lot of hydropower, so electricity was fairly inexpensive. But then they had North Sea petroleum.
Yeah.
But that's more affected by the international market there, electric. So it's been 30 years since I've been in Norway, so I don't know.
It's still electricity is pretty dominant with hydro still. Yeah. And there's times of the year where they're just abundant and they're giving it away.
Right. So they have not gone down the hydrogen road then.
There's some of that being developed. Yeah.
Did you remember how much fuel costs there, like gasoline?
Well, it's per liter, and then you gotta convert it, and the dollar's really good. That's all I can say right now.
I can tell you what.
I haven't got the bill yet.
Oh, okay. We used to live in Spain. When we lived in Spain in 1997, the fuel cost was just short of $8 a gallon. Wow. In Italy today, it's just short of $8 a gallon.
Okay, so it's been high for
20 years.
It was in Germany.
I mean, Norway's probably $8 or $9 a gallon equivalent.
Yeah, I've got a cousin in New Jersey who's complaining because it's $3 a gallon in New Jersey now, and it really should be $2. And I'm going, why is it $2 a gallon here, and $8 a gallon in other countries? Because they recognize the cost of the fuels.
Tor, have you left us? I had one more question for you.
Oh, all right, sure.
Yeah, how important did you think it was to be able to speak Norwegian to get it to navigate EV charging infrastructure?
Well, yeah, they speak English. So, I mean, so at the rental car, in the airport, they all speak English. These signs are in English.
Okay.
If you go out to the charger, you can choose language, what language you want to navigate with.
All right.
But the things I was finding beforehand had to do with Norwegian Electric Auto Association, where they had a member thing, and if you were a member, you could get a universal card and things like that. That was all before they told me at the airport upon arrival that there was a universal app or almost universal app. So yeah, English is fine.
Lawrence, did you have a question? We don't.
I did. So was that a Toyota BZ4X that you rented?
There we go. Yeah.
So some people remember it as a Busy Forks, but the thing about it that was really notable when it first came out is they had a habit of having their wheels fall off. And I don't know if it was just lack of tightening the lug nuts properly, but Toyota's been in the business a long time, and all cars, even before electric cars, had wheels. So I don't know what really happened there, but Toyota has been really dragging their heels and getting the.
He was in Norway. They were on skis.
So Toyota has really been dragging its heels on doing an electric vehicle. And so, like many other car manufacturers, they have electric vehicles a bad name.
I mean, I'll just say one culminating thing. Here I went through all this experience and now I want to like, can I tell somebody so that you can put this information on the Hertz website, for example? Because there's nothing there that says,
Here's what you'll do.
here's what, relax. We've got this app,
Yeah.
so, but to try to communicate to Hertz or anybody else is, anyway, that would be my follow-up with this.
You ask Hertz, what was the rental card? How card? Or was there a way to ask?
Yeah, there's just no way. It's just like, they don't want to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
So it loop on websites and stuff like that.
You're finding that that's not just Norway.
Oh, it's everywhere.
You're finding that every place places where you could go up in an airline and rebook. You go up to the counter now. I'm sorry, we can't do that here. You have to go on the web.
Yeah.
I'm going, it's got ridiculous.
Yeah, you don't even want to hear about some other stuff.
Sonia, find us the right to the EV.
Okay, you guys ready for the next topic? So finding the perfect used EV, I kind of tuned this conversation to people who don't really know about EVs. So I think it's very high level, but your feedback at the end would be great. We could keep tuning it. So a used EV, is it right for me? The first pointer that I would offer is that you would want to compare the value to a new EV. In the past, we had been finding that new EVs with rebates were cheaper than used EVs, so you may not want a used EV. But now we have, a lot of used EV prices have come down, and we have kind of a bigger breadth, I would say, of used EVs. And if you're flexible in terms of the number of miles that you want, et cetera, you can get some pretty great prices. And once in a while, I do speak to people in my family or my friends who say, my price range is more like $15,000 or $20,000. And that's not exactly a new EV with rebate kind of price. The next thing that you'd want to look at is your needed EV range. And this is like, whenever I go to purchase something, I think, what makes me kind of like different that would give me an advantage over everyone else? And maybe it's like I'm okay with a 70-mile car. I don't know. So if your EV range is smaller, your commute round trip is a little smaller, your weekend trips, et cetera, you might be able to get a smaller range car, but at least you'd give yourself kind of a range to look for. Your charging options. This kind of affects your range. If you're able to charge at home every single night, you're going to have a full battery every night. So that's one thing that I wanted to make a point to everyone about, is that a lot of us only charge twice a week. That means for the most part we're dealing with more battery than we need, but that's great for road trips and things like that. And then the last thing is that your ongoing costs, if you're switching from gas to EV, are going to be different. You can expect lower maintenance and lower fuel costs, and things may not have the same exact cadence in terms of your budget. And so that's whether or not you want a used EV. Then you might want to decide what type of model EV. A lot of people think about the car companies that they hate and then look at the rest of the car companies. A lot of people think about the model, maybe they only want a crossover SUV or something like that. The expected battery range after some years of use is going to be different from the battery range when that car rolled off of the factory floor. So this is the piece that I kind of spoke to that I'd love everybody's feedback on. Dominic and I kind of went back and forth on, some of the websites that help you estimate what to expect from a battery range for a car that's, say, 4 years old, 5 years old, something like that. And there's some information out there at electricforall.org. It has a lot of links out, including links out to Recurrent Auto. And so I think of electricforall.org and then just choosing used EVs and incentives off of their main menu is a great one-stop shop. And then you can kind of link out and look at Recurrent Auto as well and get some information on a specific make and model. Does anyone have a make and model that they've looked for right now?
An EV6.
And EV6, yeah. So did they start making those 2 years ago? Could you get a 2023 for a little less?
I have a 2023.
Oh, there you go.
And
So-
Mike, how much did yours
I
cost?
just bought a 2023.
Oh, you did? Did you buy it used?
Yes.
Somebody got
So-
bored with it.
This is great because I think like if you were new to EVs and you said, well, gee, an EV6 is supposed to start out with 320? I don't know. Let's just say 320. Why does mine say 312? Is there something terribly wrong, you know?
And mine advertised 305, 310.
Mm-hmm,
And I typically, after 20,000 miles, get 330.
mm-hmm.
So I'm actually getting more than what they advertise as the vehicle loosens up. The same thing, one of the things for the used that I would point out, you have to look at the generations because Mike and I both had the original Nissan, and the original Nissan Leaf, the mileage went down pretty quickly and pretty tragically.
Mhm.
I had the 2018.
Mhm.
So that's now 6 years old. It's got 40,000 miles on it. When I first got it, I got 160 miles worth of range. Today, I only get 158.
Right. Well, these are really bad examples, so I'm going to pick a different example. So, you know, when you look at a 4 or 5 year old car, it's definitely going to have a range of less than what it was originally advertised to be. And that might cause you some concern, but how much less, it might be totally fine, you know? And to your point about generations, I think that Recurrent Auto does a good job of, it doesn't tell you, oh, this was a bad year for this car. You know, you can get that maybe from Car and Driver or Motor Trend or Consumer Reports, and we didn't really cover that a lot in this conversation, but I do think that you can look at a 2018 Chevy Bolt, or I'll pick my car, a 2019 Tesla Model 3 standard range, started with 240. My car gets 225 right now. And when I look at Recurrent Auto, it'll give me I'm going to use the word range in a different way right now. It'll give me a range of mileage that seems normal. Like it's okay for this car to be 205 to 220 or 230 or something like that. And so my big thing that I thought you as highly technical people would have an interesting feedback on is that I think that's good enough for picking a car. Like, do you really need to have, you know, a dealer do a full battery analysis on a used car if it's charging to a reasonable kind of range? So, you know, could I get comfortable, you know, buying a Chevy Bolt? I'm switching to Chevy Bolt so we don't have to deal with the politics of the Model 3s right now. But like, so could I get comfortable buying a Chevy Bolt that's 2018, that's in this little ballpark, and assume that, you know, it might have a replacement battery when it comes to Chevy Bolts, but assume that there isn't significant degradation, there's only normal degradation that's about 1% a year.
So, you know, whether having driven a Bolt, and I think a lot of these cars, is the mileage it shows the range it has, it's totally dependent on what you've been driving. So if I've been doing a lot of city driving, it looks like I can go 350 miles, you know, based on that. So if I've been on the highway recently, it's less, a lot less.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
That's kind of a tough one to use as a gauge.
Okay, I'm going to talk about battery warranty real quick, and I have another point on that in the next slide. The other thing to, you know, tell your friends and family who aren't as familiar that, you know, there's a federal requirement for battery warranty that you can kind of rely upon. That's actually supposed to be improved in the future. So future EVs, as they roll off the factory lot, have an even more stringent battery warranty. And so that's something like, I think it's kind of different for people to realize that the value of a used EV is highly concentrated in the battery, right? And so that's just to help people get confidence. And then moving on to where can I find a good EV? We talked a little bit about the local dealerships here. Find the EV specialist if there is one. You know, do a little research so that you know that you're talking to someone who's better informed. You know, even if it's a great dealership like Platinum Chevrolet or Jim Pone Kia or whatever, getting to the EV specialist is a great pro tip. Some dealers will offer the $4,000 used EV tax credit up front. It's an easy IRS filing for dealers, but not everyone has done it. They haven't bothered. So you could get that $4,000 off the hood from certain dealers. Franchise and online dealers. So let's talk about CarMax. CarMax has a couple of charging ports. They've got what I thought of as, not super well informed people to help you, but they do have good inventory. Carvana, unlike CarMax, offers the EV tax credit up front. They're the company that will drive the car to your door and let you mess around with it for 7 days. And if you like it, you keep it. And then, there's Craigslist as well. The screenshot on the right-hand side is just showing people that you can filter to electric only on these websites, including Craigslist, so you can get a view of just the electric cars. And I think a good way to go is to just look through private parties here in West County, because a lot of EVs get gently used. A lot of EVs have very low mileage. I think it's a nice time to get a used EV from that perspective.
Does anybody have any experience with the Redwood Credit Union? I stopped in there this week, but I didn't.
Did you find a plug-in EV there?
No, but they have a charger. They have a little charger.
That's new. Oh, that's interesting. So
Where was that, David?
Redwood Credit Union, Dominic?
Has a charger now?
Yes, but it's a level 2. But
Oh, okay.
It says end phase on it, but it's
Wow.
phase 5 from the state. But that's new, that they have one and they're planning to put more.
And they were Grass Valley.
Well, what's the point? Is it that they finance the
Something
cars,
connected.
or is they?
Used car lot?
Yeah.
Redwood Credit Union has a used car lot, and I've never found a plug-in car on their used car lot yet. You can look online.
And
so
they will.
David might be telling us something new, which is that they might.
They will also broker. They will go look for something with the dealers who will work with them.
So
yeah,
it isn't everybody, but both new and used, they'll go look for you.
I hadn't talked about them up to date because we hadn't learned that yet, but maybe we could do more research.
That's awesome.
Are you ready
Yeah.
for more questions?
I want to check in with the online group. Are you guys good for me to go forward?
I have a question.
Oh,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Lawrence.
Yeah, so there's a thing called keysavvy.com, and it allows you to buy a used EV in a private sale through an online dealership that brokers it, so you get your $4,000 federal tax credit. So this opens up, I think it costs a couple $100, half of it paid by the seller and half by the buyer. But this allows you through a private sale to get that $4,000 tax credit on a used EV. So definitely keep this in mind if you're buying a used EV and don't want to limit yourself to dealerships, physical dealerships only. So I put the link in the online meeting chat with a little description of how they talk about that $4,000, up to $4,000 tax credit.
Good to know. Thanks.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, one thing I've found buying 2 used EVs is there's not a lot of inventory in the North Bay. And if you're willing to go farther, like got one in Sunnyvale and the other one in Monterey. So it tends to be areas that are a bit more affluent, that they've gone through their lease and they're selling it, returning it to the dealer. So there are more cars if you're willing to go further away.
Yeah.
And that goes with new cars too. I was looking for Chevy Bolts new a couple of years ago and found you could spend thousands less, literally thousands less, just by driving 100 miles to pick up a car at a dealership out of the Bay Area.
That was, Mike, that was your experience as well, wasn't it?
Yep, got mine in Vegas.
Oh, Vegas. There you go. There you go. Sandy.
Well, what goes
Mining
Vegas
pleasure
leads-
with business.
At the pawn shop.
Okay. Brett?
Yeah, there is also, I mean, it's not local to the North Bay, but there is a used vehicle dealership in Daly City called Green Light Auto Wholesale. that specializes in used electric vehicles. There are some of them around. There just isn't one in the North Bay region.
Okay. Yeah. So this slide is about once you find a specific EV, did you find a good one? And what are you looking for? And people know what to look for in terms of door dings, but in terms of the battery, again, will it charge to an expected range? And how it was last driven will affect the range estimate. If you're traveling around auto dealerships on a warm day, it's likely that the EV sat there idling with the AC on. Like all sorts of things will happen that are actually quite weird. So to Tor's previous point, I had sat in like a Chevy Bolt or whatever, and it had just kind of a really strange range. And all I could attribute it to was maybe it had just been sitting there with the AC on or something like that. And it just ran the battery down. An inspection, I think we all know that you can get an analysis of a battery from a local dealer. And so that might be a slight advantage if you're, at a dealership and it's their brand auto and they can tell you whether or not they've kind of analyzed the cells.
Does anybody have any idea how one figures out the health of a battery other than the little monitor in the vehicle? Like, what is it that one would look at?
Well, I think like the equivalent of Leaf Spy, which was a Nissan Leaf app, you plug into is it the ODBE port? Yeah, and you can do an analysis so that each cell pack is analyzed, and if they're uneven, that's not ideal, right? Okay. But this is my thought, is that maybe it just doesn't matter that much, because those are kind of unusual situations. You've got the battery warranty, and if you're seeing that it's charging up to a reasonable range, like, do you guys feel comfortable with that?
Well, it's kind of interesting that this was years ago in an EV show in Napa, and I ended up talking to a dealer there. And I was talking about how the range on, that's when I had the Leaf, the other Leaf, and the range was going way down. He said, if you bring it in, we can analyze the pack and replace some cells. And I've never heard that before. I never heard a dealer ever talk about that before. I never went to go see those guys. But that was one of the questions I was going to ask this in general. The last two fossil fuel vehicles that I owned beside the airplane, what including the airplane, every 200,000 miles, the engine gets rebuilt. Well, the engine doesn't, or the motor doesn't need to be rebuilt in an EV.
Right.
Right. But the batteries could use a rebuild. And I still haven't seen anybody making a serious business out of restoring vehicles. In the East Coast, it's never been an issue. You don't have to rebuild an engine in the East Coast, because the body of the car never lasts 2 years. But here, I was blown away when I moved here to find cars that were like 30 years old driving around on the road. So the engines get rebuilt. So we're going to have cars where they're perfectly good, but we need batteries. And I still don't see those businesses.
Yeah, so, Sonja, we bought our Bolt from Platinum used. And in theory, they went through a full analysis and all that. Yeah. I have to go back to the paperwork to see exactly what they shared with me, but it was, and it also said they'd replace the battery because the bolts have gone through all that. Yeah. So I was like, oh, okay, I feel good. Yeah. But if you took the car to Platinum, for example, how much would it cost to do this analysis? I don't know. I mean, that's a question mark still.
Yeah, I understand.
I've had it done, and it's like it was $200. But they want to sell you on a multi-point inspection of a car, so it would be $500 or something.
Yes, I bring my EV6 to Jim Bone every 7,500 miles, and it's 7,500, and they charge me $75 to rotate the tire and to do a battery test. And they do exactly what you described, Sonja. They go through every cell and they look at all the voltage ranges and they give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down on the battery health. So it's something dealers can do. It comes right out of the OBD2 port. The data's there. The car knows all the stuff it needs to know.
Oh, so we can read that too, right?
That's a job for somebody.
You can hack into it.
Do you get a report from them on that?
I just get a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and I've never gotten a thumbs down. The car's only 12,000 miles on it, but
Yeah.
But
Dominic brings up a really good point. Because EVs don't really need anything, you might forget to rotate your tires, and that's an expensive thing to forget.
Yeah.
I always forget to rotate my tires, and because the way EVs function, I don't rotate them when I finally get around to it. Instead of rotating them, I wait for the drive line to wear out, and then I buy a new set of tires, say put the new ones back on the drive line, and take the other ones and put them on the non-drive line.
You only buy pairs.
I only buy pairs. I don't buy 4. Tires are fucking expensive.
Yeah.
And the thing was this: they told me we can't do that, and I said, "Well, it's too bad. Let me go find somebody who can." And they said, "Okay, we'll do it."
Yeah.
You know, I really would recommend you set yourself a Google Calendar reminder for your tire rotations because it's cheaper.
So we bought a used Nissan Leaf 2 years ago. We had a 2020 F model that we had for 2 years. The lease was up. I could have bought it for about $20,000, but the new tax credit on used had come in. And just before I decided to buy that one, I looked online and I found a used FD Plus, the big battery, 2020, same model year. And it had originally been listed at $29,000. They dropped it down to $24,500, and so it was down in Richmond. They listed it as a Nissan pre-owned warranty, and then we get down there to buy it, and we're there with only the new finance guy who's only been there for 3 days. All the managers went home, and he pulls out the Carfax who's been in an accident. Okay, so we went ahead and bought it anyway, though. And in test driving it, the anti-skid light kept coming on, and you guys, I can prove that you said it was manufacturer warranty, and we drove it home, and coming north out of San Rafael, the light would come on, and you'd lose power because it thought it was in the skid mode. Son of a gun. We took it into Jim Bone where we had leased our previous ones, and Robert, the tech guy, tells us, okay, 2 problems. It's been in that accident, and there's a replacement strut on the right side, but I did a new alignment, and then the replacement tires they put on were not the Michelin recommended. They put some Sumitomo tires. And he said, I put the Sumitomo tires in the back and old Michelins that came with the car in the front, and the problem is gone. So we drove it for 2 years with no problems. And then this year now it started shimmying. We took it back. My wife took it in, and they rotated the tires. They put the Sumitomos on front, and they worked fine. So, and did a new alignment. So that's
I
our
don't know if I
experience.
recommend that to other people.
Profile.
Right. I mean,
It's like
I'll
what
argue
not
with
to
you,
do.
by the way, on saving money by rotating the tires, because if I wear out a set of tires, I'd be wearing out 4 tires if I kept rotating. And then when I went in, I had to go buy 4 tires instead of 2.
Well, that's true. Like if you want to have like kind of lower budget purchases, why not?
Well, you're going to use
Two
it.
at a
You
time.
use up rubber no matter what.
There you go. There you go.
And rubber is not the worst pollutant from an EV, right?
My last point here, I think David covered why you should get a Carfax report pretty well. Also, there are some recalls, and we know of a few of these ourselves, but why not make sure all the recalls have been addressed? But in addition, I think that the people who were at our previous meeting, who were very new to EVs, were very interested in special situations. They didn't know upfront about Chevy Bolts and how they'd had battery replacements. And also just like the reassurance, like that might be a good thing. Like you might get a brand new battery on a slightly older car, and they've proven to work out pretty well for people, including Tor, so he can verify that.
But that last point that you made maybe needs to be a bullet on here as well about recalls. Because with the 2018, Leaf.
Mhm.
I've already had 3 recalls on it.
The 20 had 3 recalls. The 2020 had 3 recalls.
Right,
Yeah.
and they're all free, right? All free
Yeah.
repairs. On the EV6, I had a recall on the EV6
Yep.
as well. So with EVs, both used and new EVs, we're going to see more recalls because a lot of the technology is newer. We're trying different things,
Mhm.
and part of the standards are different now too. The last recall on the Leaf, 6-year-old Leaf, the recall on the Leaf was they needed to anchor the rear camera. So I actually checked to find out if the NTSB now requires new vehicles to have a rear camera, and they do. It's
They
now
do.
a safety requirement.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
those some of the things you find on the EV, things that they didn't know
They
wouldn't
needed to
work
And
until
some
you do
things are
100,000 miles.
non-EV related that you still just want to do, like the hatchback struts are too weak and
Yeah.
you might get hit in the head by your hatch.
So, are you gonna touch upon the Hertz thing?
Yeah, I want to touch on that.
Okay, go for it.
Brett?
I was just gonna say, you can actually look for recalls online for free. You don't have to get it through a Carfax report. Carfax is good for like accidents because they track that stuff, I think, better than any government website I've seen. But the National Highway, is it NTSB or is it National Highway Traffic Safety Administration?
Oh, maybe you're right.
They have you can put your VIN number in on their search and it's a
And
tool
get
that
all the
allows you to
recalls.
see if
Well, it'll tell you whether there's
That's
been a
great.
recall. It won't tell you whether the owner took it in and got it done.
Okay.
No, I think it will. I think the dealerships have to update that information.
Let me hit on the Hertz.
Well, before you go there,
Okay.
I wanted to talk about, so I know someone with a 2019 Bolt who has not gotten his battery replaced yet. And his attitude is like, well, the chances of this one catching fire are pretty small and we park it on the street anyways. So he's just going to use the battery for as many miles as he can and then take it in and get a brand new battery. So he gets basically more battery capacity over a longer time than those of us who traded ours in immediately or had the recall done immediately. And it to me, it seems like a safe strategy. And so you might actually want to buy that Bolt with the old battery so that in 5 or 10 years when you get your battery degradation, then you take it, the recall battery put in.
Lawrence, does your friend with the Bolt with the non-new battery in it, does he have insurance on that car?
Most cars.
I imagine he does. I mean, you have to have insurance in California, right?
Him to put the new battery in. Insurance probably doesn't.
They're not paying that much.
They're not aware. Oh, they're okay.
You know, sometimes I think about, you know, am I an individual making a recommendation that sounds chancy, or am I a representative of an organization making a recommendation that sounds chancy? Like, I hope it works for him.
Well, so on this topic, when I was searching, about 6 months ago about the Bolt and things related to the Bolt, I got 2 ads that popped up from 2 different law firms that are doing lemon law cases on Bolts. And they both followed up with me, called me, send us all this information. We're averaging $10,000 settlement from GM on Bolts.
Wow.
Well, you know,
Hold on, plus keeping the car, or you have to give the car up if you get that?
Because their argument is shipping's requiring you to only charge to 90%. So you're not getting the range that they sold you the car based on.
Advertising.
Right, false advertising, and they're doing settlements.
That's yesterday's news, and it's probably a scam. Quite honestly, that's my instinct.
Right, but
I mean, I get that stuff too, but it's also littered with all kinds of other scams that are in our inboxes.
Hertz.
I actually believe that because we were given a bunch of money by Chevy just to shut up and go away and enjoy the battery replacement when it came along. So I think they were, and we didn't have to go through a lawyer or anything. We just had to be persistent and you know, give them a hard time for a while. But other people with lawyers probably could do 10 times as well, which is in the range of what you're talking about.
There was also a similar situation years ago with the Honda Civic Hybrid, because the hybrid batteries were failing before the warranty period at such a
so
rate.
this is a presentation about how to buy a used EV. You guys are bringing up a lot of things that scare people about buying. So when, you know, if you're having a beer with a friend and they've never bought an EV before, like think like a little more like a salesperson and
Yeah.
cover the things that they really need.
Yeah, at least.
No, but we're saying that you can actually make money and get a better car with more battery capacity over time by
Those
looking for
points I
that
like.
vehicle with the old battery.
I'm wearing a fire resistant suit.
Right?
Oh, come on. There was what, 10 fires or something? Just don't park it in your garage.
There you go.
I mean, the way I think of it is that if there's a problem, what do you do?
Yeah.
So I kind of try to frame it in that perspective.
Yeah, I worry that people feel that EVs have more than their fair share of issues, and they really don't. I don't think they do.
No, they're advertised better.
So let me make the point about Hertz and Tesla. So, you know, we were all talking about how Hertz got into purchasing a lot of EVs, including a majority of Teslas, but not all Teslas. And they have kind of unwound a lot of their EV rentals, but most of those rentals were actually given out to Uber and Lyft drivers. And so these cars were used they were used heavily, and they have very high mileage. And I think that a lot of your friends and family may not realize that this was not a Hertz rental that was, you know, sitting in Palmdale getting driven out of a parking lot on occasion. These were cars that were used as drive share. And you know, any drive share person will tell you they go through cars really fast, whether they're gas or electric. They just go through them really fast. They use them. You know, maybe they put a couple 100,000 miles on them pretty fast. So I don't know if that bolus of Teslas have kind of wound down, because when I look at Craigslist or something, I'm not really seeing a lot of those cars anymore. Maybe they're in specific places. I don't know if anyone has other special situations like avoid this, but Jerry brought up certain years of certain cars, right? You know, older Nissan Leafs, things like that.
Yeah, I have a question.
Nissan Leaf in general.
You can find a Nissan Leaf on Craigslist for like $2,000, but it has 30 miles. What's a reasonable expectation for a battery replacement on that kind of car?
Well, you know, yeah, my sense is that there was a window of time where you might have gotten a $5,000 battery replacement from a Nissan dealer, but they aren't as interested anymore in doing that type of work. And with inflation and the price of labor, it no longer makes as much sense to replace a battery on a car like
Actually,
that.
you ought to get a better answer here.
Right, and they don't want to do it here either.
You can buy Nissan Leaf packs from China that are an upgrade for $5,000 about, but you gotta find someone to install it.
Well, and there's a guy in the UK who does actually advertises, and he's got packs that he puts together, both at the standard range, and if you get the older Nissans, he's made bracket so that you can put the 45 kilowatt hour version on the Leaf as well. But they do that themselves. They don't sell it out as a kit. That's because I think all of us who had the older Leafs investigated that to see what was possible. But the real problem turned out to be this: is that the chemistry for the batteries and the way they're configured changed, and that's the reason the 2018 is doing so much better after 40,000 miles than the 2011 did after 40,000 miles.
Jerry, I think that's your answer. Is I would steer a family member to a 2018 or newer
Right, a 2018
Nissan Leaf, and it's a good car.
And the 2018, it's not a $3,000 car. It's more like a $15,000 car.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just gonna say that even if you said this, like how to buy a used gas car, we'd have the same sort of comments.
Yeah.
Like to avoid that year, do this.
Yeah.
You know, what if you bought this junker? Can I fix it? But to your point, you know, a friend recently said, "I'm thinking of going electric."
Yeah.
And she has a job. Like, well, what's your daily use? You know, going down to Moran or something like that. And it's, you know, the rebates and tax credits that are available, because dealers don't always share that with you. And you know, what kind of cars have some track record that are pretty good about.
Yep.
And how to go about buying it. You know, I mean, you're covering most of it. So a lot of this, you know, pitfalls or rabbit holes you're going to fall into.
That's it's a strong point, because I don't remember that Marilyn was joining our meetings.
right?
She was looking for a used EV.
Yeah.
And she ended up buying a used EV. And recently my wife saw Mary Lynn, she's just talking about her used EV, which probably only has a 75-mile range. She says, this thing's fantastic. I could do everything in this EV. Because Marilyn never drives more than 15 miles a day.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's perfect.
She's good with it, and
As
it's
soon as
more
she
of
learned
a,
how to open
Like
the
a
windows
truck
and
for her
open the
now.
door.
yeah, it's like a 2013 or a
Learning curve.
2012, right?
Yeah.
Leaf. Did I have anything
No, I think that
else?
was your last one.
Okay.
Can I double back? I mean,
Yep.
you did it. The question about dealers being able to offer you the tax credit, that's kind of a new thing, right? As of this year?
It's
'Cause last year,
it's as of the Inflation Reduction Act passing, and then it's as of January 2024.
so this year.
So-
It wasn't available
Yeah.
to us last year.
No,
Exactly.
it was in January
Exactly.
2023 it started.
Yeah.
Well,
And
no,
so-
it was a tax credit, but we had to take it ourselves versus the dealer take it for you. Because that was the thing, if you're a used, like Maryland's situation or somebody else, it's like, okay, you got 20,000, you'll get $4,000 back next year. And you can get also up to $4,000 rebate from PG&E in 6 to 7 months after you bought it. How do you cobble together the money to buy the car in the meantime?
Yeah.
So being able to give that tax credit up front, pull down the price
Right.
that you owe in the transaction moment is
So-
lost in this
Okay,
discussion.
Let me add some texture to what you just said. So the federal credit of 4,000 on a used EV is still based on your income tax liability, and you're probably not making so much money that you don't qualify for it, because most middle class people are going to qualify for it. It's only if you're making quite a bit more than that you would not qualify for it, right?
Like 400,000.
400,000,
No,
stuff
No,
like that.
no, that's
A year.
maybe it's less,
Single
75,000.
150 for married.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So on a used EV, it's $4,000. If you find a dealership that is covering you for that $4,000, you still have to have it come out right on your 1040. It's just that they gave it to you up front, and the IRS will not give it to you again. So
Wait, how does the dealer do that then? I don't understand.
Yeah, they don't.
Because I
The,
understood.
the dealer is out the money. When we talked to Chevrolet in January, they said the dealer is out the money.
Okay.
And only you are the one that has to true it up in April of the following year. That's what we learned from last year, is that if it's not right, the dealer is on the hook for that money up front, and they don't pay out until it all trues out the following tax year.
Yeah, and I missed that because on the new car sales, that's the presentation I gave. New car
Yeah.
sales, dealer gave me 7,500 off.
and the
But
dealer
I
has
had to
that
lease
money.
the car from the dealer for a month. And then I ended up buying the car from the
get
dealer.
through the
So the
loophole.
dealer bought the car.
Yeah, but that's no longer true. So now, like at least right now,
Yeah.
you can go to a dealership and get 7,500 off a new EV off the hood. So the PG&E credit too. So this part was covered by a Sonoma Clean Power employee, so I didn't cover it in our previous conversation, but it might be worth just mentioning it really quickly. The PG&E used EV credit, you can get $1,000. It's a rebate. I think you need to apply within 60 days of having purchased. And the $1,000 is pretty easy to get. There's also a lower income tax credit if you are of low income means, that you can get an extra 3,000, so a total of 4,000. All right. So, it's not quite like the middle income one, but it's kind of the lower income one. And then you get another 4,000. So that is like, you're either going to get 5,000 off your used EV or 8,000 off your used EV, depending on your tax liability.
So along those lines, there's a number of websites online where you type in your zip code and it lists all of the EV incentives, both new and used, that are available to you. And of course, a lot of them have income requirements. But even the $7,500 one has an income requirement. So the dealer's out the money, they've got to check carefully ahead of time to make sure your income isn't so large that you can't get that one. So any way you cut it, there are income requirements and qualifications and all that. But I also wanted to throw in, if you wanted to get a car that is not available for the private $7,500 new credit because it costs too much or whatever, you can actually get it through the commercial one, where again you lease it, and the dealer, the restrictions on like where the battery is made and where the car is made don't apply for commercial purchases. So the dealer,
I gave a presentation on that because that's precisely what I did a year and a half ago.
Yep.
right, and someone just mentioned it. So you lease it, and they take the commercial incentive off the top, and this way you can get a car that's not on the list for regular people, and then you buy it off the lease. And you know, you got to pay attention to all the charges and stuff to see that the dealer isn't making all the money rather than you. But anyways, just keep an open mind to what's available by going through the commercial loophole.
Yeah, so
it costs about $2,000 worth of the $7,500 for you to actually do that. So you net about $5,000.
And you know, I'd like to make the point that I don't like talking in that level of detail to people who want to buy a used EV.
yeah, I agree.
I don't like bringing up
Right.
really challenging things to think through, because then they think buying a used EV is like so much harder than buying a gas car for some reason.
Well, I guess the other comment I would make for everybody is that given the election, I think that if you have friends that are on the fence about buying EV, you buy them before January 20th. So I would expect, because I'm almost positive I read that Elon is not a fan of EV incentives anymore. And so I would, if you have friends that are on the fence about buying a new or used EV, I would expect EVs are going to be they are going to be ground zero for things to stop on January 20 at noon p.m. or noon at noon. So get on it if you've got friends that are on the fence.
But I believe there will have to pass legislation at that point to reverse the legislation that's in place.
I think you're right about that.
Yeah.
I think they'd have to reverse some inflation reduction.
So you've got to, you know, the new power is executive action, executive orders, and you've got an unchecked executive. So I would be, that would be settled by the courts, and that would take 18 months to figure out. And by the time it gets figured out, Congress would already have changed it. That's my opinion. The world's about to change, and so I'd run. If you're interested in doing this, do it now.
If you take that a step further, I would assume, like, if you like Kia, you might want to buy a Kia, you know, things like that.
I was thinking, what you just shared in a few slides to make it more user-friendly for a bigger audience.
Yeah.
You know, is there any thought of expanding that into a little more? Like, I usually like to do profiles, like, here's what so-and-so did, you know, and then bought a used car, here's where he bought it, and that highlights all those things you just talked about. Here's what someone actually did. But if it's going to just remain a couple slides right now. Who is?
Ellen? Ellen was going to talk to you next week.
Takeaway. Your presentation covered a bunch of stuff. But in buying a used EV, for me, the primary thing I'd be looking at is the battery health, and I'd be looking at the experience others had with the vehicle. Now, in the case of buying a gas-powered vehicle, I'd be looking at the experience that others have,
same thing, and
I'd be looking at the engine. So for me, the difference between the two is the engine and what happened with the engines versus what's happened with the batteries. Because the motors, there are different kinds of motors, but not any of them wear out at the point that cost a lot to repair.
I guess the thing is, it's like when we have EV car shows and the owners are sharing about their cars. It's way more impactful than the dealership show.
Yeah.
So in that same way, if you're going to write up about how to buy used cars, profile a couple of people that have done it and who have used these different incentive programs. And
well, this was done in conjunction with a show and tell. So
I know, but that was like beyond the day of the event.
Yeah, how to
create
package
something that virtually can.
Should we have something on our website that talks about buying an EV?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A used one, particularly.
Yeah.
That's what this is about.
Brad is.
I was going to say, I mean, at least at the National Drive Electric Week event,
there were kind of two ways of doing it. You know, I mean, what Tor was saying in terms of people, you know, the public going up to EV owners and asking about their vehicles. But what I tried to do at the NDEAA booth was ask people what their vehicle situation is. Like, how many vehicles do you own? What kind are they? Have you thought about getting an EV? And kind of personalize it, but letting their situation lead, and then kind of
I
making.
think that was really powerful. I watched you do it, and it worked really well.
Yeah, well, just kind of different ways of doing it.
Yeah.
It's less informative, but it's more personal.
But
to
that's
the
a
person
one-on-one
who's- Yeah,
kind of
exactly.
approach.
Yeah,
Extract their questions out of them
Yeah.
first.
yeah.
We're not the open discussion. I just want to ask a question. I got something in my email saying, would you review what we're thinking about for the stickers on vehicles? How many of you responded to that? Did anybody? Who else got it?
Yeah, I did. Absolutely.
Lawrence got it?
I had one response on that. Yeah, I told him which one I liked the best. I liked the first option the best. But there was one piece which is missing, which comes back to this discussion. And if you bought a new fueled car, what's the miles per gallon? And the discussion on I thought was right on the stickers. But the one thing that was missing was miles per gallon or miles per kilowatt hour. And the reason I thought that was important, because I happen to know the Teslas don't do as well as the EV6s on miles per kilowatt hour. Okay, so it costs you more to fuel a Tesla and drive it than it does EV6, and it costs more than some of them are getting 5 miles per kilowatt hour.
Or a Lightning that gets 1.5.
Yeah.
Or a Hummer.
So that has to do with the cost of ownership, and I thought I was putting together a presentation at some point for the website, which can either be a video or write up or whatever. The key things to look for in an EV, and then the other things to look for if you were looking at a used EV.
Good.
Yeah, I was going to say, Jerry and Mike, you guys are engineers. I mean, I know you know that.
I'm not I'm a scientist.
Okay. but a lot of people aren't. So when you talk about cost per mile or cost per kilowatt hour, I mean, not cost per mile. Cost per mile is kind of generic.
Yeah.
You know, not cost per gallon, cost per kilowatt hour. So that's kind of why I choose cost per mile, because when you're talking about range of an EV or how far somebody has to get, or you know how far the commute is.
Oh, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I say cost per kilowatt hour because if you
So
looked at
some
your stickers before,
simplification.
what miles per gallon did you get before?
Yeah.
Okay, and everybody had that, and they knew they're going to buy gas, and the price. Well, the cost per mile you don't do for this reason, because if you put that on the sticker and you were selling it in Washington State, where it costs 5 cents per kilowatt hour, it's going to cost you one thing per mile. Here in California, if you've got any local power, it's at least 40 cents per kilowatt hour.
Isn't it fractionally different? Like, isn't it inconsequential? Let me use that word. Isn't it inconsequential how much it costs to charge a Model 3 versus an EV6?
No.
It's not inconsequential. It would be like $10 a month.
What do you mean?
Well, I thought
It's relative
I thought
to
I
what?
I thought I could ignore
close.
that because I don't care that
so you're
much if
saying
it's like not that much money.
Are you saying the cost per kilowatt hour?
No.
Compared if you're driving a car.
The cost of ownership is
Yeah.
about so it's
Significant.
3 miles per kilowatt hour. We're at 4 miles per kilowatt hour.
Once you get past Prius, you're okay.
Okay, so this is $500 a year. I've done the numbers before. It's $500 a year. Difference
$500 a
between
year.
your car and our cars.
At how many miles annually?
Well, it's
The typical
12,000
for it's 12,000 miles a year per car.
Okay.
That's interesting. I didn't think it would be that much. Okay, well, it's a finer detail, so you have to decide. Like, I kind of am on Brad's side of the things here, which is, you want to start with simple, and a lot of people just come to you and they say, I need this model car, or I need this many seats with seat belts, and they're not moving off that.
Well, it's also they're coming from paying a lot more gas prices to
We're talking about
whether you're
conversion.
this or this with
Yeah.
electric. I mean, it's good to compare it to where they're coming from.
It's very funny also because the other thing that's not even in your presentation. We should have it for buying an EV. Bernie, and I went through something with Bernie. He was looking for getting another member, looking at getting batteries for his house, and we were looking at things together. and he's talking about when he charges his car, because it's less expensive at night than during the day. He's got a tremendous number of solar panels on his roof with no batteries. And I started looking at it and I'm saying, well, you want to be able to do arbitrage. And he goes, well, I don't see how that's going to do much for me. And the reason for that is he's still running on TOUC schedule. Okay, the difference between peak and off peak is something like 4 cents a kilowatt hour. Now, if it's an EV2A schedule, the difference between peak and off peak is 28 cents a kilowatt hour. So part of the discussion with an EV as well is the fueling of the EV. So the miles per kilowatt hour is significant, but also having a discussion someplace about where are you going to be charging? You're not going to a fueling station in most cases. You're going to be doing this at home. So you want to think of the whole solution.
Well, and I think that's what Sonja was saying is accurate. That's probably way too complicated for most people, at least in the beginning. And so I think, I'm a big fan of used vehicle dealerships that specialize in EVs, partially because it gives someone a place where they can go ask a question, just like Sonoma Clean Power. You can take your PG&E Sonoma Clean Power bill and show it to them and say, hey, I don't understand this.
That didn't work. I tried that with them.
Well, right. I haven't seen anybody who understands the true.
Yeah, I know.
But so, I think the other part of buying a used EV, if you're trying to educate the people that have hung out this far and now are going to go buy a car, whether they're lower income or middle class or whatever, is the charging part. Because I have off-street parking, I have a level 2 charger home. That's so convenient. If I did that, I would find it to be a little annoying. And you have to deal with but then sort of not to scare them away, you're like, well, if you don't have home charging, while you lobby your apartment building owner or whatever to get chargers there, here's what you can do. So the other thing I wanted to add, since it's open discussion and related to this, was potentially giving scholarships to students. If there's one idea is to, if we want some students to do some research for us, give them offer a scholarship, because there's some classes that do this kind of stuff. And they don't have to be EV technicians or anything, but it may be one of these aspects that we ponder, have somebody to go researching and give them a scholarship for it. So that I segued to another topic that we've wrestled with.
No, nicely done. I'm glad you did that, Tor. That's one of the things I want to talk about too, was sorting out. We talked about, 6 months ago or over the summer of what to do with some of our funds and how to actually execute that. But we started focusing on the JC from a scholarship perspective, found out that they don't have anything related to EVs over there anymore. And then we did talk to Switch and Annalee about that. But Annalee is probably at least a year away, if not more, before they have anything like a Switch vehicle. They're oddly enough, they're the only school, or one of the only schools in the county that don't have a Switch vehicle. Everybody else does. And so we have talked about scholarships, but I don't think we've sorted out how we want to execute that. And then the other thing about that is that the way that we haven't found a way to save our money in anything other than under the mattress. So our money won't grow. Like if any of us were trying to save money, we just put it in the market or put it into a money market fund or something like that. But the way we have the money right now is in a mattress, and it's not going to grow to self-fuel a perpetual scholarship.
I wanted to add one more thing, Dominic. I had forgotten that Ellen sent us a message that she couldn't attend today's meeting, but she has some ideas for how we could spend our money. And I wanted to kind of open that up. If Ellen has an idea that she wants to bring to us next month and discuss that, if everyone could just kind of put their thinking caps on and bring new ideas, I think we're at a little bit of a crossroads. We could, have a good discussion on that next.
Well, I would raise the question whether community foundation, whether we could get up to a level of money, and then we could talk to community foundation to give grants and have a professor at Sonoma State, make an assignment, and we pick the winning response paper or whatever to some of these questions.
Yeah, and I actually, when you're saying that, more than just a grant, you say, oh, we want to have a presentation on blah, 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 created by, and give it to a class, and we'll sponsor that. And then the responsibilities is a deliverable. That deliverable is one we can use on the site.
Yeah, so that sort of segues away from looking for a program that's more technician specific, like voters that actually do
more research.
So the example that comes to mind is, I've tried to get EV chargers at Annalee High School through the last few years, and part of that, if they'd say, "Oh, we can get 6 spots." Like, how do we share them? That's more of a protocol kind of design thing. If you actually got 6 put in there, and then the other half is, there's student drivers, like, polling the student drivers and parents and stuff, like their first car is an EV versus a gas car.
Yeah,
which is in my mind perfect, but there's research to be done there. So anyway, there's plenty of researchy type of things that could be thrown out to JCs and on the state, high school
Even
level.
high schools. You'd be surprised.
That's good.
One of the things that I do is I volunteer on the Policy Advisory Council for the MDC. Every summer, and Dominic went with me, every summer, they have high school students come in for like a little internship program. They actually pay them like $20 an hour to come in, and then the students are responsible at the end of the summer, put a presentation together on some topic that they selected that had to do with transportation or community or whatever else. I was blown away by the quality of the things that they brought forward last year and again this year. I don't know what you felt about that, Dom.
No, it was very good for sure. The reality is we only have, I think we said we could spend 4,000 to 5,000 or something. So it's not like it's this ain't Bill Gates money.
I don't think we have to even.
It doesn't have to be that much.
Right.
Doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be that much.
Yeah, but $500 for a grant to do those researchy things are pretty good. So maybe we should have a discussion about that by itself. I've got to go in exactly 5 minutes. I wanted to do 2 things in those 5 minutes. One was I wanted to alert everybody to do some research on the CARB vote last night on the low carbon fuel standards. And I think we all should be aware of what they approved. I'll let you do your own research on that, but fundamentally, they're expanding they're lowering the carbon allowable thresholds for fuels. And think we all just need to get smart on that. I think our non-EV driving friends are going to be quite curious on why they approved this, because they don't know the impact on the price of gasoline in California. CARB's own estimates were in the 45 cents a gallon, affected fairly immediately. So I think our non-EV friends are going to be kind of curious what those dollars go to. And then the other thing was getting ready for next month. So I'm still trying to get a meeting with Switch, to have a meeting over there so we all understand what those guys are doing, trying to go down the scholarship road, but not necessarily. I think Tor had some good ideas we need to look at, but the next meeting would be at Switch. Part of that would be to kind of review, if at the beginning of last year, we talked about our goals and outcomes for the year, maybe go over those things, kind of compare what we thought we said we were going to do, and then bring you guys along on how we did against those goals, and maybe set up some goals for 2025. And then along that same line, if anybody has topics for 2025, we'd like to get those on the list. I think we did a pretty good job this year of forecasting out our topics for the meetings. We did that in January or December, and I think we did a pretty good job of hitting all those topics and sort of setting that up. And if we can look out 90 to 350 days at a time, it makes it easier to get outside contributors, that rather than saying, hey, can you tell us a story in 30 days or 20 days or 15 days to prepare a presentation for us or something like that. But by reaching out 6 to 12 months, 6 to 12 weeks in advance, we can get people like PG&E to come and talk to us. And like I said, I do want to get this new senator to talk to us, and we'll just keep pushing out and maybe see if we can get somebody from CARB to talk to us. The Utility Reform Network, because these prices from PG&E are absolutely, they're insane. Municipalities throughout the state pay a third of the prices using the exact same grid that PG&E says they need to get costs to us at Ukiah, Healdsburg, Victorville, Shasta City. They all pay about 15 cents. My brother in Elk Grove pays about 15 cents. And they're using the exact same interconnect wires from the hydro and the geothermal plants and the nuclear power plants that we use. So I'd like to get some meetings with people like that, but if you guys got ideas, like to have some of that feedback in the next 90 days.
So just correction is Chris Rogers.
Chris Rogers, thank you.
He replaced Assemblyman Jim Woods. Yeah. Mike McGuire is still in the Senate for another 2 years.
That's right. Yeah, thanks, Tor. Yeah, thank you.
There we go. David.
And the electric home rate is lower than the EV rates on PG&E's website. But PG&E's website, every time you go to compare rates, they tell me every time that I'm on a different rate plan than I actually am on.
We heard they make a lot of mistakes and own up to them.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, I've got to go, guys. Great discussion. Thank you, Sonia. I think it was a really good presentation on used EVs. And thank you, Tor. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks, everybody. I think we can wrap this up.
Sonia, my hand's been up for a while, and I wanted to ask a question about your presentation.
Oh, sure.
One thing that I hear from people, and actually it discouraged me quite a bit. So I drive an old gas guzzler. I don't drive it much, but I pay about $400 a year on insurance. And whenever I talk to people with newer cars, and especially EVs, it sounds like the cost of insurance is phenomenally higher. And I'm wondering if you can give me a sense of what it would be for a used EV, and maybe if it's any different than for a gas car, that could be something mentioned in your presentation.
That's a great point. I think that we should, touch on the fact that insurance for certain models is much higher. Generally, insurance is much higher, so I'm not exactly sure. The cost of owning a car has just gone up by so much, but you've given us yet another thing to research. And I think this one might actually be kind of top level that you'd want to cover with people, like, be prepared to pay more for insurance, that sort of thing.
There's also, I mentioned this before, there's a company, Lemonade, that does insurance that does it on a pay per mile model. So you pay like a certain base fee, a certain amount of dollars per month, and say 5 or 10 or 15 cents per mile. So if you drive very few miles, it may be worth checking out.
Yeah, I think we'd have to do some research to understand whether it's really much different to insure an electric car versus a gas car, given some of the details. I mean, I know that Tesla's a little unique, or had been, but it feels like it's all merging together. I mean, at least the costs I'm paying.
Tesla was offering insurance, right?
They do that.
Yeah, but you can't use them if you have a non-Tesla in the family. So
oh, really? It isn't just car by car.
No.
It's a cut.
Well, yeah, and it ends up not being cheap enough.
Well, Tony Seba, the futurist from South Bay, and Rethink X, has been saying that we're headed to the cost of transportation as service is going to be 10% of owning your own car. We were just in San Francisco last night watching all the Waymos with the passenger sitting in the passenger side and nobody in the driver's seat.
Maybe we should do a presentation on how to not own a car.
Right. That is what we're at.
There we go.
Yeah.
I mean, connected to that is these apartment / buildings that have, And
Yep.
the idea of electric car shares is like in other modes.
Right, and,
Yeah.
and the
Begs for more a relook. You
the
know?
state legislation on affordable housing does give those incentives. If you got a car share within, you know, a certain distance of your units, you don't have to do one parking.
You don't have to do much anymore. No.
Yeah.
To piggyback on your idea of how to go without a vehicle, maybe another way of thinking about it in terms of community is like how to reduce the number of vehicles in Sonoma County. The California Energy Commission takes California DMV data, and there's like 415,000 about registered light duty vehicles in Sonoma County. So to even kind of picture how to reduce that number by, I don't know, 15,000 a year or whatever,
Mhm.
you know, just kind of get it down.
It used to be more cars than people in Sonoma County. Right?
No, I think that actually, if you look further, there's more vehicles in Sonoma County than there are.
Right.
But certainly more than there are drivers.
Yeah, those are just the registered vehicles. Right? I
No,
think
no, no, light vehicles.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, then we have a whole bunch of other, like a pickup truck is not necessarily a light vehicle.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, depending on.
And do you have anybody in the neighborhood that has a pickup truck?
Right, because they got a business tax.
Yeah, the shared truck.
I have a truck share situation in my neighborhood. And Bill's offered his truck to me on occasion.
I'm thinking about putting a hitch on my Bolt just so I can multi-purpose.
Yeah.
Do you have a
But
trailer available to you?
we've gone full circle because Tor said the problem in Norway is too many cars, too much traffic,
Still
right?
a lot of traffic.
And so they completely, like,
they
if you
have
think of Norway as having the most EVs ever in any country, but they still have a traffic problem.
Sorry, I just came back from Rome, and Rome, they have a tremendous transit system. You walk out of a cousin's apartment, stand on the corner, and 3 minutes later, there's a bus coming by that's gonna take you where you wanna go. And yet everything is at a standstill because there's so many cars, you can't move down the road
Right.
to drive every place.
Or the bus is pretty full.
The buses, one bus we were in, the only way that we could get in was somebody on the outside
Push you
us
in.
in order to get onto the
It's
bus.
totally yours.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I have a cousin that's lived in the heart of Oslo for years. She always, I would talk to her about cars. She's like, I gotta have a car. I gotta have a car.
Very quick,
you know? And then Oslo rules are sort of shrinking, and it costs you to go in and out of the city. She finally sold her car as a member of like a car share.
We lived in Spain for a
Because you
year with
can
no car.
Bike and train and whatever around town mostly.
Has everyone heard that Kathy Hochul might bring up congestion pricing again
In New York.
very quickly?
No.
Yeah, she wants to like get it in.
But I'm on a task force meeting this week again through the MTC, which has been looking at tolling the highways. And part of the initial plan was congestion pricing into San Jose and into San Francisco, and that part's been dropped. Tolling, I've been totally against. But the other proposal is in the Bay Area, charging by the mile for the roads that you drive on, because we're not collecting enough money to repair the roads anymore.
Right.
Well, I thought Sebastopol,
I thought
Sebastopol
Take
needed
any
to be able
travel
to charge
to
a
do
toll for all the people
even
from
if
driving to the company,
the
Costco
vehicle
and the
gets
big
charged
box.
70 cents a mile.
So we can dig a tunnel
Registration
underneath the
insurance
They
would
have-
be
They're
downtown.
actually talking about different plans. One plan was using a satellite system, another one's using transponders. And the one that I proposed, I thought was the simplest one, which was through registration, say, my odometer setting is this year, this is how much I owe you. And they keep saying, well, people cheat. I said, well, that happens on taxes too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
just don't charge anybody.
All right, are we done?
I think we're done.
But next.
Was this a
month we're
successful meeting?
Last four.
We didn't go over.
One more.
saying-
Where are
You guys all set online?
Mark?
Should we say goodbye?
Oh,